the room of echoes in every soul. There exists a chamber of echoes, a place where words once spoken continue to reverberate long after voices fall silent. We enter this world screaming, and many of us spend the rest of our lives filling the silence we fear with noise we don't understand. But the wisest among us, those shaped by the fire of suffering, the burden of contemplation, and the stillness of grace, learn a truth hidden in the marrow of existence. There is a kind of strength that only silence knows. Cslewis once wrote, "The human spirit will not even begin to try to surrender self-will, as long as all seems to be well with it." But what if wisdom is not found in shouting ideas or broadcasting our wounds? What if the highest form of intelligence is not the ability to speak, but the mastery of when not to? Let us then open this sacred manuscript, this invisible scroll of interior truth, and explore together the things that truly wise people, those whose souls have been refined by both faith and fire, never say. But before we enumerate these hidden commandments of silence, let us understand the foundation. For silence is not weakness, it is not cowardice, it is not repression. Silence, in its truest form, is composure wedded to conviction. It is the refusal to betray one's deeper knowledge to appease one's immediate emotions. It is the voice of eternity, louder than the roar of the crowd. The Stoics understood this deeply. Epictetus, born into slavery yet remembered as one of the freest men who ever lived, taught we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. In a culture addicted to reaction and reply, restraint is revolution, and so we begin not with a shout, but with a whisper. Not with noise, but with nuance. Let us enter the temple of wisdom and listen to what is never said there. 1. Let me tell you what they did. The sin of gossiping, the inner world of the wise. There is no room for the delight of scandal. Gossipers, the feast of the spiritually hungry, the illusion of power gained through the illusion of knowledge. But every time we speak of someone else behind their back, we chisel away at our own moral authority. Seneca once wrote, "It is better to be silent than to speak ill of others, not because others deserve our silence, but because we deserve our own peace." To gossip is to scatter our integrity to the wind. It is to eat the poisoned fruit of curiosity, mistaking it for nourishment. And the cost is always more than we imagine. Reputations are burned, trust is eroded, and the soul grows dull with every word. The wise do not engage in gossip, not because they have no opinions, but because they understand that what we say about others says more about us. Silence here is not abstention. It is resistance. It is choosing not to become the echo of someone else's sin. 2. Here's everything I'm planning. The wisdom of concealment. There is a sacredness to your future, and the wise protect it with silence. In the book of Ecclesiastes we read, "To everything there is a season, but not every season must be spoken into existence prematurely." The wise do not overshare their plans, because they understand that ideas are like seeds, too much exposure too early, and they wither. Cslewis reflected on the danger of pride masquerading as transparency. The trouble about trying to make yourself stupider than you really are is that you very often succeed. When we speak too soon of what we dream to do, we risk making ourselves performative rather than purposeful. Epictetus warned, "Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it." That includes your visions, your goals, your transformations. Let them rise like the sun, silently, steadily, inevitably. Let your actions whisper what your mouth once shouted. 3. Can I tell you something private about them? Betrayal and disguiseth wise. Never use confession as currency. To reveal someone else's secrets, even under the veil of trust, is to become unworthy of trust ourselves. No amount of entertainment, curiosity, or comfort justifies the breaking of sacred confidences. To keep silence when you know something salacious is not weakness, it is moral discipline. It is the voice of the soul refusing to betray itself. Seneca taught that no man was ever wise by chance. That includes how we handle the vulnerabilities of others. Wise people never spread what was spoken in vulnerability. They become vaults, not vending machines. You are not obligated to share what is not yours. Silence is loyalty, and loyalty is wisdom. For let me tell you how good I am. The subtle ego trap. There is a kind of pride that dresses in humility. It speaks softly of itself, always with a self-deprecating laugh, but the motive is still clear. Praise me, notice me, approve of me. Wise people never need to announce their greatness because they understand that true greatness is invisible until it is needed. As Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, and the best proof of value is not what you say about yourself but what others say when you are not around. Let others see the fruit of your tree. Don't shove it in their hands. 5. Let me explain why I'm afraid. The sacred inner fortress fair is a universal experience, but wise people know when to share it and when to hold it close. To expose your fear to just anyone is to hand them a map to your vulnerability. But to acknowledge your fear to God, or to a trusted soul, is courage in action. Cslewis wrote in A Grief Observed, "You never know how much you really believe anything until its truth or falsehood becomes a matter of life and death." In those moments, the wise do not broadcast their panic. They seek stillness. They return to prayer. They go inward, not outward. Fear expressed recklessly becomes fear multiplied, but fear expressed with wisdom becomes fear transfigured. The Stoics did not deny emotion. They mastered response. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." 6. I'm so dissatisfied with everything. The poison of chronic complaint. There is a fine line between vulnerability and victory. Complaining is the art of rehearsing disappointment until it becomes identity, and wise people refuse to let that happen. To express dissatisfaction is sometimes necessary, but to dwell in it, to let it become our primary language, is to dim the light we carry within. Seneca again warns, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Complaining robs us not only of our dignity, but also our clarity. The wise speak of problems only as preludes to solutions. They name the pain, but they don't live in it. Let us pause here, on this quiet hill of inner transformation. We've only begun our ascent. In the next block, we'll continue unveiling the other things the wise never say, depending our journey through silence, character, and sacred self. The tongue that does not burn. There is a fire that does not warm, but consumes. It begins in the mouth, kindled by anger, fanned by pride, and soon it spreads to minds, to hearts, to communities. Words have burned down empires, severed families, and hollowed out souls. But the wise, those rare souls who walk carefully through the forest of speech, have learned to wield the flame without letting it devour. They do so not by suppression, but by devotion to a higher power. Silence is strength. Silence is sanctity. Silence is stewardship. James, the brother of Jesus, once wrote, "The tongue is a fire, a world of iniquity. It defiles the whole body and sets on fire the course of nature." And yet, we still speak often too quickly, too bitterly, too blindly. But the wise do not. They have buried certain phrases in the ground like dangerous seeds that must never be watered. For they know, some things must not be said, not because they aren't true, but because they are not useful, merciful, or timely. Let us then continue our sacred inventory. Let us descend deeper into this silence, not as retreat, but as revolution. 7. You're always ... and you never. The tyranny of absolutes. No relationship survives long beneath the weight of absolutes. To say you always or you never is to paint someone's soul with a brush of finality, denying the possibility of growth or change. It is not truth. It is control disguised as criticism. The wise do not weaponize language to win arguments. They choose precision over exaggeration, compassion over condemnation. They understand that correction without love is cruelty, and that relationships, like gardens, require pruning, not fire. Cslewis reminded us that love is not affectionate feeling, but a steady wish for the loved person's ultimate good as far as it can be obtained. And you cannot will someone's good while caging them in absolutes. Speak to the moment, not the myth you built in anger. 8. That's just how I am. The idol of inflexibility. Few sentences are more deadly to the soul's evil. That's just how I am. It is the anthem of those unwilling to grow, the hymn of pride pretending to be authenticity. The wise never idolize their personality. They know that being true to yourself means being true to your highest self, not your current habits, not your wounded ego, not your inherited flaws. Stoicism demands inner transformation. Christianity demands rebirth, and both agree, you are not finished. You are not fixed. You are clay, not stone. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." And being good requires change. The wise prefer correction over comfort. They submit to truth rather than defend their dysfunctions. 9. I knew this would happen. The lie of retrospective certainty. After a failure, the voice of ego whispers, "I saw it coming." But this is not wisdom. It is cowardice cloaked in insight. To proclaim foresight after the fact is to seek superiority, not solidarity. The wise do not use the past to elevate themselves. They do not rehearse their predictions to showcase how right they were. They sit with others in the ruins, not above them. Epictetus taught, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." And those who always say, "I knew it," close the door to humility. Let others fail without needing to be reminded that you didn't. That is mercy. That is wisdom. 10. It's all pointless. The poison of despair spoken loud. There is a kind of darkness that, when named too often, begins to spread. Despair, when voiced without care, becomes contagious. The wise know when to speak their sorrow and when to carry it in prayer. To say it's all pointless is not brave. It is the surrender of vision. And while every soul touches the edge of this abyss, the wise do not build houses there. Cslewis faced unspeakable grief, and yet he wrote, "Though our feelings come and go, his love for us does not." Despair is a season, not a sentence. And silence in the valley of shadows is not denial. It is listening for a voice deeper than pain. Wise people do not infect others with hopelessness. They anchor themselves in meaning, even when the waves of suffering rise. 11. I'm not like them. The subtle elitism of the wounded comparison is the thief not only of joy, but of compassion. To say I'm not like them is often to declare superiority rather than separation. It may sound humble, but at its root is a hunger to be seen as exceptional, exempt, elevated. The wise reject this. They know that every soul carries both light and shadow, and that judgment often reveals more about the observer than the observed. Jesus told a parable of two men. One, a Pharisee who boasted in his moral superiority, and the other a tax collector who simply begged for mercy. Only the latter went home justified. Wisdom is not separation. It is solidarity. It does not say, I'm not like them, but for grace, go I 12. I'll never forgive them. The vow of the unfree forgiveness is not about denying pain. It is about denying pain the right to rule us. The wise know that to say, I'll never forgive is to chain oneself to the offender, to carry their weight long after they are gone. Cslewis wrote, to be a Christian means to forgive the inexcusable because God has forgiven the inexcusable in you. That doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing freedom over fixation. The Stoics believed in freeing the mind from unnecessary suffering. What could be more unnecessary than nourishing resentment? The wise may grieve, they may weep, but they do not swear allegiance to bitterness. 13 I already know. The death of learning to say I already know is to close the gate to wonder. It is to harden the heart against revelation. The wise never say this, not because they know little, but because they know how much remains unseen. Socrates, the father of Western philosophy, was called wise precisely because he claimed to know nothing. And Cslewis echoed this in his own way. Humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. Every moment holds the potential to teach, and the soul that believes it has nothing left to learn has already begun to die. The wise remain students even when they become teachers. 14 They deserve what's coming. The voice of vengeance, not justice. There is a temptation to watch others fall and feel satisfaction. But the wise reject vengeance, even internal vengeance. They understand that to delight in someone else's downfall is to poison the well of one's own soul. Justice is necessary, but gloating is not, and the wise speak of justice with sobriety, not Paul wrote to the Romans, do not repay anyone evil for evil. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. The Stoics echoed this. When another blames you or hates you, turn to yourself and examine whether you deserve it. Correct yourself. The wise do not wish for downfall. They wish for awakening. And so, with each phrase the wise have burned from their vocabulary, a new space opens within us, a space for clarity, for stillness, for presence. The soul becomes lighter, not because it has fewer words, but because it has more truth, more peace, more purpose, and the silence that once felt like absence now reveals itself as presence, a sacred presence, a strength hidden in quiet. The words that break us, why some things should never be said. There is a silence that liberates and a silence that imprisons. But there is also speech that wounds, words that slip from our mouths and leave scars, not on the skin, but in the soul of another. The Stoics taught that reason should be our gatekeeper, and that our mouths are doors through which either light or poison may pass. In the realm of wisdom, silence is not repression, it is refinement, and speech is not freedom, it is responsibility. In this third passage of our journey, we turn to the sacred power of restraint, and to the invisible walls built by words better left unspoken. Let us begin with anger, the fire that leaps from tongue to tongue, consuming peace and turning understanding to ash. Seneca, in his treatise on anger, warned that no plague has cost mankind more dearly than the ungoverned mouth during fury. It is easier, he wrote, to restrain the beginnings of anger than to control its full fury. Wise people do not speak in anger not because they do not feel it, but because they have learned to let it settle before it settles them. Silence during rage is not cowardice, it is command. In the fire of insult, they choose not to throw logs but to extinguish sparks with stillness. The next word that ought not be uttered is mockery. Derision is a dagger disguised as laughter. The wise do not mock, not because they lack humor, but because they know that ridicule often hides deep insecurity. It may make others laugh, but it also erodes trust. Cslewis warned of the inner ring, a circle of mockers who bond through contempt, not courage. Wisdom does not wear sarcasm as armor. It wears compassion as strength. Instead of mocking what is broken, the wise bend toward it in quiet repair. Now consider the boast, the need to trumpet one's virtues or victories. True strength does not echo in the loud room. It whispers in the hidden place. Marcus Aurelius wrote, the best revenge is not to be like your enemy, and equally, the best victory is not to become prideful in your triumph. The wise rarely speak of their accomplishments because their identity is not built on applause. They are content to do good and let it remain unseen. There is a mysterious dignity in those who do great things and say little about them. Then there is the temptation to overshare, especially in the digital age. The wise do not expose their hearts to the multitude. They understand the sacredness of privacy. Stoic silence is not a refusal to connect, but a reverence for what is sacred. In a world where everyone speaks, those who guard their inner life shine all the brighter. There is something profoundly unsettling about those who cannot bear their own solitude and must empty their lives into the ears of others. Wisdom listens inwardly before it speaks outwardly. Another verbal pitfall is the promise made in haste. Empty commitments are as dangerous as lies. When the wise say yes, it is with the weight of intention. When they say no, it is with the clarity of boundaries. The wise do not promise to please, they promise to fulfill. There is a difference between politeness and integrity. The former agrees too quickly. The latter measures each vow. To speak ill of another's beliefs, whether spiritual, political, or cultural, is to wound something sacred. The wise person understands the limits of their own view and holds room for the mystery in others. Cslewis reminds us that, next to the blessed sacrament itself, your neighbor is the holiest object presented to your senses. To disrespect another's convictions is to speak as though you have seen the whole mountain, when in truth, you may only have glimpsed a single slope. And perhaps most devastating is the betrayal of trust. Sharing the intimate secrets of another, this is not merely poor taste, it is spiritual violence. To be entrusted with a confession, a pain, a vulnerability, is to be given a kind of invisible treasure. The wise guard such treasures with fierce silence. They understand that to speak what was whispered in confidence is to unravel the sacred thread of relationship. Finally, let us speak of complaints. Or rather, let us not. The truly wise have learned that to verbalize dissatisfaction without action is to multiply sorrow. Complaints are confessions of helplessness. The wise do not ignore pain, but they express it in prayer, in reflection, or in meaningful action, not in idle grumbling. Like a tree in a storm, they sway but do not break. They endure rather than broadcast. So then, what does a wise person not say? They do not gossip, boast, mock, complain, overshare, or speak in anger. They do not promise recklessly, nor do they speak ill of others' beliefs. They hold secrets as sacred, and they guard their thoughts as treasures. In a world drowning in noise, they become islands of stillness, and in that stillness, they radiate power. The wisdom of what not to say is not about silence for silence's sake. It is about choosing a silence that speaks louder than words, a silence that protects, heals, dignifies, and strengthens. For every word not spoken in haste, not launched in pride, not sown in bitterness, a deeper word forms within, the word of peace. Let the world chatter. Let the crowd shout. Let vanity declare itself from every rooftop. The wise, they walk the quieter path not because they have nothing to say, but because what they carry within is too precious to cast before noise. Their silence is not empty. It is sacred. The power of quiet strength. What stillness reveals when words fail. There are moments in life when silence is not avoidance, but authority. When restraint does not signify weakness, but mastery. The wise are not silent because they have nothing to say. They are silent because they have weighed the worth of every word and chosen to preserve their strength for things that matter. Imagine a warrior in ancient times, standing still in the middle of a battlefield, not because he's paralyzed by fear, but because he sees beyond the frenzy of the moment. His sword remains sheathed, not out of cowardice, but because his true power is under control. He knows that swinging the blade too often dulls its edge. This is the soul of a wise person, one who guards their energy, their thoughts, their speech. As a sacred flame, they speak only when speaking deepens the silence. Cslewis once wrote, "The man who is wise will not bother too much about others' approval, nor fear their disapproval. He has learned to be silent even when misunderstood." This is not detachment, it is discernment. It is knowing that many arguments are not worth entering, that not every accusation requires a rebuttal, that truth, when left to breathe, defends itself more powerfully than 1,000 justifications. In the age of noise, notifications, opinions, confessions, outraged silence is a rebellion. A quiet room has become a rare sanctuary, and the person who can dwell in it without anxiety is a living contradiction to the speed and shallowness of the world. Wisdom often hides in what is not said. The smile instead of sarcasm, the nod instead of correction, the pause instead of reply. Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. "You always own the option of having no opinion," he wrote. "There is never a need to turn this into something." And Seneca advised, "A wise man is content with himself." This contentment is not pride. It is the absence of the compulsion to prove or impress. It is the ability to carry truth without decorating it, to feel emotion without broadcasting it, to know pain without turning it into performance. There is great danger in speech without depth. Many ruin their peace not because they suffer, but because they speak of their suffering to the wrong audience, in the wrong spirit, too often. The wise man knows when to speak of his wounds and when to let silence tend to them. He knows that some healing happens only in the quiet, where no words are needed and no one is watching. Some truths lose their power when exposed too early. A dream shared too soon can be killed by mockery. A vision spoken prematurely can be corrupted by envy. Not all silence is hiding. Sometimes it is planting, and the wise are those who allow their roots to go deep before seeking to bear fruit in public. They also know how to truly listen, not with the ears alone, but with presence. When you sit with a truly wise person, you feel heard not because they talk much, but because they are fully there. Their silence is not awkward, but expansive. It invites you to meet yourself. In that space, something holy can emerge. Insight, clarity, repentance, or peace. Sometimes we reveal our foolishness not through speech, but through the desperation behind it, the compulsion to fill space, to be noticed, to explain ourselves, to win approval. Wisdom walks away from that fire, not because it fears it, but because it has already been burned and learned. In a world drunk on attention, the sober mind becomes light. Even in relationships, the wise practice restraint. They do not weaponize word. They understand that in moments of tension, silence can be a bomb or a blade. They choose it not to punish, but to prevent further damage. They delay reactions, not because they're indifferent, but because they're invested enough to protect what matters. The strength of the silent is not apathy, it is focus. They see what others miss, while many speak to be heard. The wise remain silent to hear more clearly. They notice the tremble in someone's voice, the meaning behind a pause, the truth wrapped in contradiction. They use few words because they are listening for deeper truths. Their calm is not passive, it is vigilant. Their stillness is not absence, it is presence. And in their silence, there is a kind of speech that echoes louder than the chatter of the crowd. It speaks of discipline, reverence, patience, and timeless strength. The final silence, what the quiet ones leave behind when all is said and done, literally said and done, what remains is not the loudest voice, but the clearest soul. The ones we remember, the truly wise, are often not those who impressed us with their endless words, but those who quietly change the atmosphere with their presence. They leave behind not echoes of noise, but the fragrance of peace. Cslewis once observed that the most precious gift we can offer anyone is our attention. And sometimes that attention takes the form of silence, sacred, uncluttered, undistracted silence. It says, "You matter. I don't need to speak over you. I am here." This kind of silence carries the weight of love. It does not need to announce itself. It simply remains. The wise have learned to speak when their words carry the possibility of redemption, but they have also learned to refrain when silence protects the sacred. They walk the narrow path between speech and restraint, always asking, will this word heal or harm? Will it build or destroy? Will it draw light or cast shadows? There is a kind of silence that descends in the moments before great decisions, the quiet that falls before a person forgives, the hush that comes before one chooses to surrender their bitterness, or say goodbye, or begin again. That silence is not empty. It is holy. It is where eternity leans in and listens. To be wise is not to know everything. It is to know what to keep and what to let go. It is to speak only when the truth demands a witness, and to be silent when truth is already speaking on its own. It is to know that not every pain is meant to be shared. Not every insight is meant to be taught. Not every criticism is worth responding to. As the Stoics taught, you are not disturbed by things, but by your opinion of them. The wise refine not only what they say, but what they believe they must say. They choose where to place their emotional investment. They understand that silence can be an act of freedom, not suppression, but sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." And sometimes the best answer is no answer. To preserve dignity, to walk away, to bless in silence what others curse aloud. This is not weakness. This is alignment with a higher source. There's something deeply Christ-like in that posture. Recall the moment when Jesus stood before Pilate, accused, mocked, misunderstood. He remained silent, not because he lacked authority, but because he embodied it. His silence was not absence, it was thunder in disguise. It exposed the pettiness of his accusers, the frailty of earthly power, the futility of shallow questions. It was the strength of eternity wrapped in human stillness. In the Garden of Gethsemane he prayed in anguish, but in front of his enemies he often answered not a word, because some truths are not meant for argument. They are lived, breathed, bled for. You too will stand in places where the world demands that you explain yourself, defend your worth, or prove your strength. But the wise do not waste sacred energy convincing others of what they know in their soul. They let their fruit speak for itself. They build slow and deep, and when the time is right, they bloom without announcement. So what is it that wise people never say? They never rush to say, "I told you so." They never use truth as a weapon. They never speak to inflate themselves or diminish others. They never spill what the soul is still digesting. They never waste breath in those unwilling to hear. They never speak more than they are willing to live. And because of that, when they finally do speak, people listen. Their words carry the authority of lived experience. Their pauses are filled with purpose. Their presence becomes a sanctuary in a world full of chaos. They do not fill silence to escape it, they invite others into it. They make space for others to hear their own hearts again. To remember that they are not what they post, not what they argue, not what they perform. They are souls in need of quiet. So as you leave this moment, ask yourself, what have I been saying that I could release in silence? What have I been forcing that would flourish in stillness? What am I trying to prove that no longer needs an audience? Perhaps the most powerful thing you can say today is nothing at all. Just live it. Let your life speak where your words once failed. Let the quiet be your wisdom. Let your stillness be your strength. And let those who truly have ears to hear you, even in your silence.